Greetings and welcome to this edition of
Positronic episode.
I'm Barry P. Cook, and I'm here to talk to you about the latest episode of My Adventures with Superman. It was called My Interview with Superman. And as it begins, a dirigible is in trouble over Metropolis, and Superman leaps into action, as does Lois, who's racing to cover whatever happens and to try to interview Superman. Superman catches the pilot just before he falls to his death, and then also catches a steel girder when the dirigible explodes. But he takes off to deal with the remains of the blimp before Lois can get him to agree to an interview. Meanwhile, a couple of guys who've been given weapons, apparently by Livewire, break into Stryker's Island to get their sister out. At the Daily Planet, Lois complains to Clark about how Superman won't let her interview him, and he says that if he could make the interview happen, he would, which is funny, of course, because he's Superman. Lois, Clark, and Jimmy then meet a couple of their competing reporters, including Cat Grant, who've been given the Superman beat by Perry, and access to all of Lois, Clark, and Jimmy's research, inspiring Lois to just beat them to the punch. When news of the prison break makes TV news, Clark suggests that Lois and Jimmy cover that story. Apparently, Livewire also gave the two guys who, along with their sister, call themselves Intergang, a freeze ray device. Clark, Lois, and Jimmy go to Stryker's Island to try to talk to the warden, and they impersonate Cat Grant and company in order to do it. But soon, the real Cat Grant and company arrive, and the jig is up. But before they flee the scene, our heroes use the warden's keycard, which Lois pilfered, in order to investigate the scene of the breakout and discover that Intergang is planning to rob the biggest bank in the city. Simultaneously, Clark seems to be dealing with some kind of issue where his eyes turn red and he gets a brief headache. So I'm thinking that his heat vision's coming in. Intergang shows up at the bank under a cloak of invisibility, but then reveal themselves before they use the freeze ray and a sonic weapon to break into the vault. Lois plots to get herself into danger at the bank robbery scene so that when Superman shows up to stop the bank robbery, she can try to interview him again. Superman does indeed show up to thwart Intergang, but as he's doing so, Intergang's tech malfunctions, and the freeze ray goes out of control, freezing everything around, including Superman, who's able to break out with his heat vision, with which he then destroys the freeze ray, the destruction of which unfreezes everything, and also seems to give Superman some kind of a vision of the robots from last week's episode. Superman then offers to give Lois the interview she wants and ends up flying above the city with her to avoid being ambushed by Cat Grant, before taking her to the top of the Daily Planet building for the interview. When he sees that she's nervous, he says that she shouldn't worry, he's nervous too, prompting her to ask why he agreed to do the interview when clearly he could outrun her. And he says because when he told her and Jimmy to get to safety at the scene of the bank robbery, they stayed behind to try to help people escaping the situation. And that the least he could do is answer a couple of questions. But when she asks him about himself, he tells her that he doesn't know the answer to her questions because he's still figuring out what he can do and that he doesn't know where he's from. And he leaves her by saying that what she needs to know for now is that he's there to help the people of Metropolis. Lois then tells Clark that she thinks Superman lied to her when he said he didn't know the answers to her questions. And that's where the episode ended. So I continue to like this show, despite the fact that, as I said in my review of the 2-episode premiere, I'm not a big fan of anime. I'm not a big fan of the sort of goofy sort of demeanor that many anime characters have. But, it's charming enough and it's being used on characters that I'm familiar with. So it, also has the benefit of, those characters behaving somewhat like they would in other iterations of the same story. So it's enough to keep me interested. And, the animation itself is nice. And, the action scenes are well done. And so ultimately, it's a charming little show. And I'm enjoying it okay. There are only 2 more episodes. So I don't know how far they're going to get with it before they make any more. But, I'll be watching them and I'll be, offering my thoughts on them. But there isn't really much more to say. I mean, it's well animated. The action scenes are good. It's charming, but it's, sort of your typical anime in that the characters are very quirky and almost childlike. And it's only working for me because these particular characters are also embodying the traits of characters that I happen to like from other iterations. Otherwise, I don't think I would even watch it because it's just anime is not my thing. So that's really it. Very short video, but those are my thoughts, and I'm going to get out of here. I'll be back to review the next episode once it's released. Until I return, I wish you peace and long life.